Okay, welcome to Aerial Havoc. This is Oso Grande, and I'm going to give you a brief overview of the power distribution board for the new Havoc quad. Here's a quick view of the bottom. You'll see the power leads connect up back here. These will be connected to your battery. Moving to the top, those same connectors are on the back right here. There's holes right here that you can run a zip tie through to bind them to the power distribution board. That way, should you yank hard on them, they won't pull the trace pads off of the distribution board. You can also run those wires up through these holes, which will also give you some protection as well. In each corner of the distribution board, there's a positive and negative for your ESCs, as well as a signal connection. This way you don't have to run your ESC servo connection all the way up to the flight controller. It actually runs through the distribution board itself. Each one of these corners has its own, and those tie in here for the nays and here for the Sparky, as well as any of the open pilot boards. While the voltage regulators mount to the back here, there are actually three different ways of getting 5-volt power both to your on-screen display as well as your flight controller. The first option is a Pololu regulator, which will tie in right here, and that will provide the 5-volt both to here for the flight controller, here to the on-screen display, as well as this pin here, which can be used for a 5-volt camera if need be. The second option is to hook up your front right ESC, the BEC for it, directly to these right here. You'll have the ground, the 5-volt, and the signal. If you do that, then you do not want to use, you want to leave off the Pololu. The third option is if you're using one of the immersion products that has the 5-volt filtered out, you can use that. We'll take a look closer here where you connect that. But remember these three pads right here. They're very important. This one will always be connected. It'll be connected to either one of these two, but never both. Your flight controller standoffs mount there. Your motor signal wires connect up to here. The RX and TX tie into your on-screen display here. This will give you 5 volts to power your flight controller. Over here is direct LiPo voltage. So if you're running a flight controller that gives monitoring to the LiPo directly, you can plug this directly into your flight controller so it can monitor. The on-screen display is the MinimOSD, video in, video out, and ground inputs, TX and RX, again back over here. This right here is direct LiPo voltage if you're not going to monitor it through your flight controller. Looking at the video system, you've got connections up here for your camera. Those run through the on-screen display, which is set up for the MinimOSD, and sends the signal connection back here to this pin right here, which we'll take a look at all of this in closer detail here in a moment. Here's a closer look at the voltage regulator pads and the video pads that are connected to them and the rest of the board. Your video signal is here. That's the one that runs up through your on-screen display and up to your camera. This is straight unfiltered LiPo to power your video transmitter if it does not need a filtered input. Here's if it does. This is powered by this 12-volt regulator here, so you want to make sure you use one that has enough current capacity to power your video transmitter if need be. This 12-volt regulator here is also the one that powers the 12-volt camera up front. On the other side here, you've got your video pin, and here what you've got, these three pins are the ones I was referring to earlier. This pin will always be connected to either one of these pins, but never both. This is straight LiPo power, so if you're going to use the onboard filtering, you'll want to run an inductor between these two pins, and that will then power this 12-volt regulator here, which runs through the capacitor on up to the filtered 12-volt output. If, for example, you're going to be using the filtered 5-volt output from one of Immersion's products, you'll connect these two pins together here along with that 5-volt output wire to send the 5 volts in to this. If you're going to be running your video transmitter off of the filtered here, my recommendation is to use the inductor and not the 5-volt output that way. This pin here connects to the rest of the 5-volt outputs, this 5-volt output, this one, and the rest of them on the board as well. I hope that answers some of your questions about how to set up your power distribution board and keeps you from letting any of the magic smoke out. If you have any further questions, please feel free to post them up in the thread, and I'll be happy to answer them as they come up.